Okay, so we had another very full issue of African energy, posing a lot of questions. We actually led on the question of hydrogen simply because so many people are talking about it. As African energy readers know, we've seen an awful lot of hype here. There's going to have to be huge investments. A lot of it's going to be private sector, so people are going to have to put their money to really multi-billion-dollar projects. But it's not something you can look away from. We mentioned, or we went into details on two projects in unlikely frontiers, Mauritania and Namibia, where they're looking to generate 65 gigawatts of hydrogen-related power capacity, an enormous amount. We've seen in other countries from South Africa to Morocco where people have been working on very big projects. Hopefully these will work out. Hopefully there's the hydrogen future. There's a lot of people, the European Union, for example, the bigger German industrial companies that are really pushing this. Let's hope that some of the African projects get done and don't just take up a lot of government capacity and resources that might go to other more immediate areas. On the energy transition side, I'd say we had a number of interesting stories. I think a lot of the corporate shakeouts at the moment are pointing towards kind of transition policies, big oil majors trying to work out which direction they go in. We have, of course, ExxonMobil signing, looking to sell its stake in the Chad oil and Chad Cameroon oil pipeline, which a decade or more ago absolutely obsessed people as one of the major projects. What other project actually had its own section on the World Bank's homepage to explain why they should be supporting it? But not with a bang, with a bit of a whimper, although certainly important for Savannah Energy that wants to buy it. ExxonMobil is pulling out of that one. Also interesting is that BP Eni tie-up over the Angolan assets, and possibly Eni buying into BP's Algerian assets, which are a big story for European gas supply. Again, what you're seeing, large majors, particularly the European majors in these cases, trying to work their way through a fast-changing environment. We'll come back to an issue in future issues that African Energy has talked to before, as who are the winners and losers of this shakeout, particularly some of the big national oil companies outside Africa mainly, how they're seeing things going. Just on the oil front, also, as these issues shake out, you've got openings for smaller companies. We had an interview done by our hydrocarbons editor, James Gavin, talked to Petronor in Oslo, got some interesting plays in countries that are challenging but interesting, Guinea-Bissau, Republic of Congo, lots of interest there. We also looked in quite some detail at the shakeout in the AIM-listed oil company Lekoil, Nigeria focused. They have that Ogo field in OPL 310 in Nigeria. It's a complex story. Why should we be interested? Well, investors still buy into these shares. The development of Nigerian fields remains an important issue. And in the Lekoil case, I personally found fascinating the tensions between the company in London, whose largest shareholder has Southern African roots and goldfields in Zimbabwe now, and its Nigerian founder, who claims he's being pushed out by activist investors. What's really interesting is go back to the admission document from 2013 to AIM, and you see actually the Nigerian company that's contesting what the apparent parent in London is saying actually holds a dominant equity stake. So there's a lot of complexity there. Those are interests working themselves through, and we certainly will be following them. In the power sector, our power editor, Jon Marks, looked into scaling solar, where it's going. We had pieces on the what looks like the planned unbundling and eventual privatisation of transmission company of Nigeria. There's an interesting development, and a lot of project catch-ups from DRC through to Burkina, into Tanzania, Madagascar, Namibia, Mozambique, South Africa again. There's a lot going on. And finally, we had a couple of fascinating fascinating downstream issues. You know, people are still building pipelines, and one that's rather passed under the radar. While ExxonMobil may be moving out of Chad, Cameroon, the Chinese are still investing in the Niger-Benin export pipeline, going 1,982 kilometers, priced at least $4.5 billion and possibly more. Now, there's something for watchers of Chinese debt to get their heads around. And also we continued with the never-ending tale of what is Morocco going to do to secure its gas supplies, looking at the Ministry of Energy's tender, which is out, looking for expressions of interest for an FRSU, and how that fits with all the other projects. We had a couple of really good big stories to follow it up, along with an extraordinary map putting together both the power infrastructure and the extent of political violence in Nigeria, where our colleague Marc Howard was looking at how things fall further apart as the Nigerian security crisis gives cause for alarm. And we went into quite great details, and with a remarkable graphic by our cartographer David Burles, and a look at how actually infrastructure is starting to be affected. We also looked at UAE and Qatar, emerging players coming up in the region. And we finished, as ever, with the African energy view, where we focused on the questions around the legal challenges over car power ships, South African contract, and questions of governance in South Africa. It's a question of which there are more questions than answers at the moment, but it points to trends that are forever influential down in South Africa. And again, they're questions, trends that African energy will be following closely, just as we have for so many years.